So, the godfather of influence, Robert Cialdini, and I do hope all of your listeners, watchers have read his book, Influence, these 6 ways that you actually influence anyone to do anything. And they looked at a wine list at a typical restaurant. I was down in León, Mexico, a couple months ago, out to lunch with one of our clients, and they gave us the wine list. And sure enough, it was listed from least expensive to most expensive wine. And what Robert found is all you had to do was reverse the list and put the most expensive at the top and the least expensive, and revenue would jump on average about 26%. You didn't change a wine, you didn't change a price. And then if you anchored that with 2 or 3 really expensive bottles of wine, you could pull, Alex, revenue up like 250%. It's not logical. One of the ones that I think business owners never focus enough on is price. We're so, hung up on the cost side of the business. And we have for 50 years because there was actually more demand than supply. And so, look, if you just kind of showed up, you got the business. But now there's more demand. I mean, there was more supply than demand. Now there's more demand. And all the unicorns, people are always talking about, all right, how do these companies get to $1 billion, in about half the time it used to take? And one of the things that's unique is they're all focused more on the demand side, Alex, than they are on the supply side. They don't actually supply anything. And it's their deep understanding of the demand side, the customer's need, where they were just before they're about to buy your product. And they use that knowledge in order to set price. So if you look at the wealthiest guy on the planet next to Putin, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, who's right up there right now, price is changing by the minute. My book has varied in price from like $16 and change to it's sitting at a ridiculous $23 right now. And it's a paperback, but there's such demand that they know that they can actually command that. And so we've really been encouraging business leaders to really focus instead of just licking their finger and putting it to the wind and get more focus on the price side. And the reason we get it wrong is because we're selling to people. Even in a business to business, we're selling to people. And guess what we've learned? People are not logical. They're psychological. And so I've got a couple of stories and resources, but let you jump in there.
Oh, no, please. Let's start with the stories. Let's start with the stories straight up because I've got a few questions, but I want to hear this story first.
Yeah. So, the godfather of influence, Robert Cialdini, and I do hope all of your listeners, watchers have read his book, Influence, these 6 ways that you actually influence anyone to do anything. And they looked at a wine list at a typical restaurant. I was down in León, Mexico, a couple months ago, out to lunch with one of our clients, and they gave us the wine list. And sure enough, it was listed from least expensive to most expensive wine. And what Robert found is all you had to do was reverse the list and put the most expensive at the top and the least expensive, and revenue would jump on average about 26%. You didn't change a wine, you didn't change a price. And then if you anchored that with 2 or 3 really expensive bottles of wine, you could pull, Alex, revenue up like 250%. It's not logical. And so just before this crisis hit, I was in Shanghai again. I go to China once a year. And a year ago, we launched this book in Mandarin. And my day chair was a guy named Adrian Wall. And we can talk about how you need to state your strategy simply. He's got a very simple strategy, a taste of New York in Shanghai. And so he's gone to New York City and made friends of these iconic families that have these iconic single brands like Joe's Pizza, where there'll be a line out the door even right now because of takeout. And he convinced them to let him bring these iconic brands to China. And so the first he did was Joe's Pizza. And so the year before I had mentioned this pricing thing. So when I saw him about a year ago, he said, "Bert, I got to take you down to the pizza restaurant." I said, "All right." And he says, "You've got to look at the menu." He said, "We used to list it from least expensive vegan to most expensive meat lovers." And he said, "All I did was reverse the list as you suggested, as Robert Cialdini would. And we didn't get 26%, but we got a 15% boost in revenue. Didn't change a slice, didn't change a price. And that's how psychological it is. If we look at business to business, 2 years ago, and I'd encourage everyone to Google it, I'm sure you can send the link out. Harvard Business Review had a really stunning piece on pricing called Good, Better, Best. And that was really focused on business to business. And as you read through all of the detail, you find as you get down to the end that Dell EMC, now called Dell Technologies, when they went from a single price in terms of a service after sale contract to a good, better, best, revenue only jumped 300%. And so we went to that in the crisis when we launched our virtual summits. We said, let's not go to a single price, which we normally had. Let's do a good, better, best. And by the way, the difference between good and best was 10x. And it was amazing, the psychology that we learned and the revenue that we generated by being just that much more sophisticated. One last example, we have an e-commerce client that in 2019 generated about 8 million in EBITDA. Last year in 2020, by just getting more sophisticated around pricing, we actually brought in Herman Simon's firm, Simon Kucher. They were able to, and we caused them to shred literally 2 million catalogs. They were getting ready to go out in 4 days. We said, look, this will be suicidal. Shred those catalogs, move your pricing online. And their EBITDA only increased from 8 million to 40 million, a 5-fold increase in profitability just by getting price right. So I beg folks to get focused on it.
So where does this fit into the 4 areas which you talk about in your book, right? Because you've got people, strategy, execution, and cash. Does this fit into strategy or does this fit into execution?
No, you're right. It's strategy because our view is marketing strategy equals strategy. And in fact, most founder CEOs are the default chief marketing officer of their company, like Steve Jobs was for Apple. And if you have a CMO, they're really there to kind of sit side by side with you, because what's more important in the 4 P's of marketing? Product, price, place, and promotion. And if you look at those 4 P's, 3 of those, you've got to spend money before you make money. But with price, and you add $1 to the price, and in general, that'll go right to the bottom line. And it makes you money immediately.
So good, better, best is what you see on all the software company sites, right? You've got the 3 options. Education is another one that like you constantly see. Does the better option pretty much always sell the most? Because you don't want the most expensive, but you don't want the cheapest. So is that what you found personally or across the companies which you've analyzed?
You know, it was interesting. In terms of our revenue, there was an equal amount of best and better. And that was some of the things that we learned as we were watching some of our pricing matrices. So I don't think there's a fixed rule there. There is something about, obviously, the anchoring by having that higher price. But where it really plays out, we're big fans of Northwestern University professor Victoria Medbeck. Our view is the best professor, teacher of negotiation. She has some small clients like Goldman Sachs and others. And one of the things that she really teaches is, in a practical sense, B2B, we're often asked for a proposal. Even if we have an existing client, it may be the 5-year renewal. We'd like you to resubmit. And they're going to go out and get some other counter proposals just to kind of keep you honest. And what's fearful if it's competitive is that you've got these ankle biters, these low bidders that want to come in, steal the relationship. And what's going to happen. Once they're in, they're going to start jacking up the price or the customer is going to suffer. So how do you play this game? And she recommends that and we've won so many contracts using this technique. She says you always submit 3 bids, even if it's an existing customer, if you think it's competitive at all. And what you do is you vary the price based on your strength, your difference. So let's say it's response time or design or or the customer service or inventory turns or whatever it is, speed. Whatever that difference is, what you want to do is you want to shine a spotlight on it and vary price around it. So you want to submit a proposal that matches what you think is going to be the lowball proposal, and then you detail what all they're not going to get. Because one of Cialdini's principles is do more to avoid a loss than to get a gain. Hey, we can offer you this price, but you're not going to get same day. You're not going to get customer service, but FAQs. You're not going to get a turnaround of a design, but maybe for 2 weeks. You're not going to. Then you say, for this price, maybe it's the better price, you'll get next day response, next day turns, next day design. But if you want it in 2 hours, and this is where data is helpful, and you can say in the last 5 years that we've worked with your firm, your people have required a 2-hour response in order to serve your customers 86% of the time. If you still want that, this is what the price is going to be. And now a couple of things happen. If you submit 3 bids, you get it out of the hands of the purchasing agents because they don't know what to do with this. And so they're going to escalate it. And you always want your deal escalated inside the organization. Number 2, you're going to get them to start to question the low bidders. Wait a second. You didn't mention anything about this laundry list of other stuff. And they haven't. They're just hoping it doesn't get brought up. And so you cause those conversations to occur. And then number 3, if they go ahead and go with the low bidder, you know what it tells you? They don't value the difference you bring to the marketplace. So go find customers who do. And you don't want all the customers anyway, but the most major companies in the world only have 7, 8, 9%. Apple at $2 trillion only has 14% global market share. 86% of folks still don't get their phones. So, and other devices. So go after the customers who value what you bring to the table and use pricing to really sort that out.
That's genius, first of all. I have been in business for a long time, and I've never heard that for a proposal strategy, because it's always the case where they're going to be bidding less than you and they're going to be offering a lower service in terms of the features and the quality of the service and the support and so on. And yet you're kind of always stuck trying to guess. And so how would you, because I obviously have like a bunch of questions, but I'm super interested in this topic at the moment, but how would you approach pricing it so that the range between them is sufficient enough to be able to win the deal? Well,
it depends on the industry, but the range isn't as much as you would think. They say you can generally premium price by about 13% without really having to justify it much more than that. But that's when you're kind of comparing apples to apples. If you've got just that little bit better. But we've seen where, look, they're going to go with you and you're twice the price, but it's clear that the value is 4x because you've really laid it out clearly. And that leads to another topic, if I can, and that's around the complex sale. We've just launched a masterclass with Jeff Toole around mastering the complex sale. And the reality is all sales have become complex in this environment.
Yep.
And what it suggests is, sales 1.0 was you show up and throw up. It was the old talking brochure. Sales 2.0 was my dear friend Neil Rackham's spin selling, where you went in with some very intelligent questions and you kind of got under the hood and helped them really see that this massive problem you've got is this costly. And so our price relative to that is a great value. But Jeff really suggests that we're now in sales 3.0, which is, look, they don't have any time and they probably are clueless to all the problems that they're suffering because they don't have your product or service or the quality of your product or service. So you actually have to know more about the problem and its cost to them than they even know. Asking them a bunch of silly questions when they're clueless is just frustrating. And that's where I want to come back to it. The single most important function in scaling is marketing. If you had to throw all the others out, it's first and foremost marketing. And marketing's not glorified sales support. Marketing's job is to go figure out what are the best customers, who's got all the money, and what is the data behind the problem that we can solve. And we want to walk into that client and we want to present that in a way that they're like, you seem to know more about us than we do. And as a result, that's how you really gain trust. And they know that, hey, I guarantee you, if you know that much already about us, you're going to solve our problem. So that's really sales 3.0 that requires really strong marketing support.